Good morning. My name is Barbara Fuller, and as chair of the board, I welcome you to this April 16th, 2024 working session of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners. Our office coordinator, Aaron Smith, will describe how our meetings operate, how to access the agenda packet, and how people may participate remotely. Aaron.
Thanks, Chair Fuller. There are multiple ways to make public comment during today's working session, whether you're joining us in person or virtually. If you're here in person and would like to make public comment, please fill out the sign-in sheet now. If you're joining us virtually, we will ask you to raise your hand at the appropriate time in the agenda. If you're joining us virtually and are experiencing technical issues with audio or video during the meeting, submit a comment in the chat feature and our communications manager will help you troubleshoot. If you would like closed captioning during the meeting, you'll have to manually change your settings, click on the captions button and select show captions. The audio and video of this meeting is being recorded, and a link to the recording will be posted to wcroads.org in the next few days. There are printed copies of today's meeting agenda on the table near the front door, and it is also posted on our website. And now I'll turn it back over to Chair Fuller.
Thank you, Aaron. I now call this April 16th, 2024 working session to order and ask Aaron to call the roll.
Chair Burt Fuller.
Present.
Vice Chair Rod Green will be joining us at a later time. Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Yes.
Commissioner Joanne McCullum.
Present.
And Commissioner Jeff Smers is absent, but he is attending virtually. And then our following directors are in attendance: Managing Director Matt McDonald, Director of Engineering County Highway Engineer Brent Schlack, Director of Operations Adam Lape, and Director of Finance and IT Dan Ackerman.
Thank you, Aaron. At this time, it's the time set aside on the agenda to receive comments from the public. This is not intended to be a period for dialogue. Each person will be allotted 3 minutes to address the board, and Aaron will explain how people may be recognized to offer comments. Aaron.
Since this is a hybrid meeting with both in-person and virtual attendees, we will take turns between those attending in person and virtually. For virtual attendees, we have provided some instructions on the screen on how to participate and make public comment. If you're attending this meeting virtually and would like to make comment, please raise your hand now. If you dialed into the meeting from your phone, you can raise your hand by dialing *9. Our communications manager will unmute virtual participants with raised hands one at a time and will announce your username or last 4 digits of your phone number when it is your turn to speak. Please share your name and address before beginning your comments. And then for our in-person attendees, we will start with those who have signed up on the sign-in sheet as you walked in. If you didn't sign in, you're still welcome to make comment. At this time, we don't have anyone that would like to make comment.
Is there anyone who hasn't signed in who would like to make public comment? Seeing none, we will proceed. Managing Director McDonald, ball to you.
Thank you, Chair. I will invite up Mr. Ackerman, our Director of Finance, to kick us off here on his big day for year end and budget.
Tiffany's trying to decide if you get to speak or not.
While we're waiting,
Maybe you guys don't want me to speak.
I'll just say thank you to Mr. Ackerman and his team for all he's done to prepare for today. It is a lot and an onerous task, a heavy lift to get here. And I appreciate all that you have done with the directors and your group. So, and our assistants with Plant Marine. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. Dan Ackerman, Director of Finance and IT. And really looking forward to this day and this presentation. I feel like fiscally, the Road Commission had a very good year in 2023, which Plant Moran will share as many details as you'd like. One of the things I did want to acknowledge is this could not be possible without having a great team. And I am just so appreciative to work with both Tracy Balkwell, who handles our payroll, and Jamie Kraus, who handles accounts payable, accounts receivable, cash receipts, kind of a whole host of things. You may or may not have noticed, but they have joined us virtually. I invited them to either in person or virtually to listen to the presentation because, again, a lot of the numbers that are in this book are because of their hard work. And, you know, I just feel so fortunate to work with these ladies, and you know, I think we make a great team. So without further ado, I'll introduce Gene Young and Keith Szymanski from Plant Moran, and they'll go through our 2023 year-end financials. So come on up, guys.
I just want to make a note that this, for Gene, this is year 8.
Okay.
For Keith, this is year 9. So I don't know when you get vested with this group, but you're coming up close on it.
All right. Well, good morning. I know Keith is going to cover the slides, but I was gonna cover the 260 letter real quick. I don't know if that's something that can be pulled up or you have that in your packet.
I think everybody received hard copy, yes?
Yep.
Looks like this.
Okay. So you would have received that letter, which is the letter of required communication to those charged with governance along with the financial statements. Again, we're happy to answer questions on the financial statements, but really intend to go through a slide presentation just to give that bigger picture overview. And again, Dan can answer questions on the detailed financials too, but we can always answer those at a later date. So with the letter, there's a few items this year. So the first item, there is an internal control matter that we need to discuss. Then there's the required communication and the legislative items, which are really more just for you to review later, information that's impacting other governmental entities. So the first part on the internal control, this would be considered a significant deficiency, which just means that it's an internal control item that warrants your attention. It's already been corrected. Basically, with the salt barn, you had a retainage payable on the construction contract. So they always hold that back. So they don't really invoice you for it. But the accounting standards would say that should be reflected at your end. That's already been corrected and adjusted within the financials. And we discussed that with Dan. So just need to make you aware of it. The second page is really the required communication. So again, it's our responsibility to do audit procedures to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are materially correct. So we're going to consider risk and understand the key controls, but really we're giving an opinion on the financial statements. You did get a clean opinion on the financial statements, which is the highest level of assurance that we can provide. We would have provided a timing letter in advance to kind of address risks that we would see in audit procedures that need to be addressed. It's not any always specific to your entity. It can be the industry or just what we're seeing within the governmental arena. But those risks would always be anything related to management override, and then revenue recognition would always be risks that we consider. And then for you also the pension and OPEB liabilities, just because they're significant estimates. We did, actually Dan did evaluate GASB 96, which is SPIDAs, which are subscription-based technology arrangements similar to the lease standard. That was not material, so that did not have to be implemented, but it was evaluated. Your significant estimates, again, would be related to the pension and OPEB liability, which we will have a slide on so we can go through that. But we evaluate what the actuary comes up with. We look at the fair market value. We make sure it's reasonable. We have no concerns with the assumptions that are being used, but they can fluctuate based on future events. So, but again, as of year end, they're appropriate. We had no difficulties in working through the audit and no disagreements. The corrected misstatement, as discussed, that's already been reflected within the financial statements. So really not a lot to cover through the letter. And again, just really want to thank management for all their assistance to go through this process also. So with that, I'm going to have Keith get into the slides so we can get into a bit more detail.
Thank you, Jean.
Morning, everyone. It's nice to be with you today. Happy to report we have many positive financial results to report for the Washtenaw County Road Commission. There was an addition to fund balance this year, growth in revenue. The Road Commission continues to be responsible in addressing its legacy costs, and the Road Commission still maintains a fairly low debt load, despite the additional $3.1 million borrowed for the salt barn construction. Total debt at the end of the year was $5.8 million, which compared to the overall size of the Road Commission is not a significant amount of debt. So overall, the Road Commission remains in strong financial position. I've got a few slides to summarize the results and go over the highlights for the last year. So starting with slide number 2, we've basically got a graphical representation of the balance sheet with assets on the left and liabilities and equity on the right. You can see each category balances at approximately $45.2 million. And of that amount on the asset side, nearly $30 million is unrestricted cash and investments. Similarly, on the right-hand side, $30 million is in fund balance. So that goes to show you about 2/3 of each balance is in liquid, unrestricted form. So it shows that the Road Commission has a strong balance sheet and that it's liquid. It's available for operations going forward.
Any questions? Okay.
The next slide, we've got a 5-year history of road fund revenue. And there was significant growth in 2023, as you can see. The total increased by about $13.6 million or 22%. As is typically the case, the largest revenue source is Act 51 revenue from the state. There was a $2.3 million increase in that source. Revenue from local governments and federal and state sources tends to vary from year to year to some degree based on the nature of projects and who's participating at what percentage and what's going on throughout the county. But those in total did increase during the year. A large reason for that is the $4.5 million pension protection grant that was received by the Road Commission in 2023. So while that technically went directly into the trust at MERS, it is proper under the accounting standards for the road fund to recognize that activity. So we'll see there's $4.5 million of revenue on this slide and a similar amount of expenditures on the next.
Question.
Yes.
I understood that we were going to reflect the 4.5 in the 2024 revenue.
On the
Help me, Dan, I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah, sorry, Dan Ackerman, Director of Finance and IT. I think what you're referring to is MERS's actuarial, and it'll be reflected in the actuarial as of December 31st, 2023, that we won't receive until about June of this year. So, but as far as accounting goes, we had to recognize the 2023
Okay,
for the road commission's books.
okay.
For the road fund though,
Yeah.
so.
The pension activity itself is always on a one-year lag. The road fund would be anything that took place in 2023, including the fact that this grant was received and moved over to the trust.
Okay.
So it is certainly confusing based on the timing and the
Well, it
lag
is
with
to me,
MERS.
but you guys work with this all the time.
Lastly, I was just going to point out the Road Commission since 2015 has been receiving a share of the countywide property tax millage directed to roads. On an annual basis, that generates about $7 million throughout the entire county. The cities get their share for spending on their roads. The Road Commission retains the portion primarily for the townships. And that revenue in 2023 was about $4.5 million. Moving on to the next slide, 5-year history of road fund expenditures. There was an increase here as well, but not as large of an increase as what we saw on the revenue side. Expenditures increased about $8.5 million. The largest category of expenditures remains the road improvement program, which encompasses all of the road projects done by the Road Commission. That increased about $4.1 million compared to the previous year. And here the increase in non-departmental expenditures includes that same $4.5 million, basically representing the distribution to the MERS Trust of that state grant.
Just for point of clarification, road improvements also includes capital outlay, which would include equipment and facilities, just for the board's recognition.
Thank you.
Yes.
Moving on to the next slide, history of fund balance for the road fund. So here we've got the last 5 years of actuals as well as a projection for 2024. Any year in which the revenues in the road fund are greater than the expenditures, we'll see an increase in fund balance, which was the case in 2023. Actually a fairly sizable increase for the last year of about $8.4 million, bringing the total to $30 million. Most of the fund balance, as you can see, is in the least restrictive categories, which is assigned fund balance and unassigned fund balance. Starting with the most restrictive, though, at the bottom, non-spendable of about $3.4 million represents inventory and prepaid expenses. The restricted fund balance is unspent bond proceeds from the borrowing for the salt barn. There's a small amount of committed fund balance. The assignments represent fund balance that has no legal restrictions as to how it can be spent, but the assignments are made by the Road Commission management, indicating that there is a plan for how those will be spent going forward. So those includes planned spending for the 2024 budget, future capital improvements, employee retirement, and insurance retention. So covering some of those long-term liabilities that are not recorded in the road fund, but nevertheless will come due in the future years.
So I have a question, Gloria, and then, no, Commissioner Green?
Yes. What is the distinction between restricted and non-spendable?
Non-spendable has to do with the form that it is in. So that money, the cash is no longer with the Road Commission. It's in the form of inventory and prepaid expenses. So the road commission hasn't consumed those yet. There's still inventory out in the yard and available for future use. Once you spread the salt on the roads or use the inventory parts, add them to the trucks, then they're expensed and come out of the fund balance.
What's restricted?
It is still in cash, but legally restricted only for certain purposes. So in this case, it's the borrowing on the salt barn. It started with $3.1 million. Not all of it was spent as of the end of the year. But under the terms of the debt agreement, that can only be spent for construction of the salt barn. You couldn't use it to pay employees or carry out road construction projects.
Thank you.
Sorry, were you
Thank you.
finished?
Yes.
Okay. I saw your hand wave, it must be. Anyway, can you tell me percentage? I'm always concerned about the percentage of
Yes.
fund balance.
The total is 44% of this year's expenditures, and that's an increase. Last year it would have been 36%.
Chair.
You want to speak to that, Matt?
Yes, please. Obviously, we've had some discussions and we'll have further discussions later on this agenda regarding the budget, how we closed out 23 and then how we're looking for 2024. We're looking at the first quarter budget later in the agenda of the working session. But I just wanted to note that we had a fair amount of carryover projects. One example is the salt barn. When we were initially looking at it, we were assuming we would construct the salt barn and have all that money spent prior to the end of the year. That was not the case. So that's one example of a large carryover that where that $30 million, ultimately it's identified as unassigned, but the management team has plans for that and we have to finish and pay for that salt barn. So, and then we had various carryover projects in addition to that. Those are some of the things that we'll talk about for the 2024 first quarter budget.
So the 44% is a reflection of last year?
A
2020?
snapshot in time.
Understood.
So that's all that is. It's a snapshot in time. As of December 31st, here's where we're at. We had some really good, pleasant surprises in revenue where MTF went up a little bit in December. We had some unexpected earnings. The market was very good last year. So that in combination with our carryover projects resulted in a much larger than anticipated snapshot in time for the fund balance. Ultimately, as we adopted the budget for 2024, at the end of the year, we were expecting at the end of 2024 to have a $10 million fund balance. We anticipate, and we'll talk about further, that in first quarter, we're looking at more like $18 million. So very good position, but much different than the snapshot in time at the end of this last year.
I just want it to be made clear that this isn't a cookie jar that's gotten really full.
No,
Those
we have-
funds are committed and it's not just sitting there.
We have a lot of needs in
Right.
road investment, equipment and facilities. And we have plans for that, but we want to also be fiscally responsible and maintain a healthy fund balance in case of Mother Nature's strikes or unexpected expenditures
Right.
are there.
Right.
So
Mr.
Dan,
I'm sorry, Mr. Ackerman.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of jump in, add to what Matt said.
thank you, Dan.
As the board knows, we run a conservative budget. So I'll ask Adam, is there any possibility at all that the salt barn could be 100% constructed in 2023? You'll say, well, maybe 5%. And I'll say, well, conservatively, we'll want to make sure we budget for that. Obviously, that wasn't the case.
Mhm.
So again, that's some of the carryovers that Matt is talking about. You know, is it possible we'll receive some of our heavy trucks at the end of the year? Well, very slim chance. Let's budget for it conservatively, and then we can always carry that over into the first quarter for next year. And so that's what you'll see in, you know, kind of what Matt was talking about. You'll see a lot of that in our first quarter 2024 discussion.
I really appreciate the nature with which we approach our finances and we don't go in the hole. So thanks. Okay,
I think that's good perspective, though, on the right-hand bar there, where we projected 2024 fund balance. We note that it's the ending 2023 amount plus what was budgeted to be spent in the original budget for 2024 does not factor in the carryovers and those expenditures that were budgeted in 2023 but now we're gonna be spent in 2024. So while we've got a projection of over $25 million on there, clearly there's gonna be some other spending. Similarly, there'll be other changes throughout the year too that no one is aware of right now. So the road commission has a tremendous budget practice. I know a great deal of time gets put into not only preparing the budget, but monitoring it and adjusting it throughout the year, and the board receives its quarterly updates. So continue to keep a close eye on that, and you'll receive updates on where the fund balance is likely to end this year as you go throughout the year.
Any other questions, commissioners? Okay, go ahead.
On the last two slides, we focus on the status of the defined benefit pension plan here, and then on the last slide, the retiree healthcare plan. We do so because these are the two largest obligations outstanding for the road commission, and the annual contributions and expenses to fund them make up a significant portion of the road fund's annual budget. So it's important to keep a close eye on these results. As we talk about pension here, it's important to again state that these are on a one-year lag. So the MERS measurement date is December 31st, 2022 that we're talking about here. And if you recall, 2022 is not a great year for market performance. There were investment losses, not just in MERS, but in pension plans and personal investments across the board. So the assets that are available in the trust, the plan net position did decrease during the year from $48.7 million to about $43 million. Similarly, the total liability as measured by the actuary, the value of all of the future benefits that'll have to be paid to both current retirees and actives, continues to increase each year. And that's normal as employees get closer to retirement, more retirees join the rolls and begin collecting their benefits. So overall, the funded status for the year ended 2022 did decrease to 51%. And this is a plan covering 289 total participants, 143 retirees and 128 active employees, along with 18 deferrals. So employees no longer working for the road commission, but eligible for benefits in the future. As the liability has increased over time, so too has the required contribution as determined by the actuaries. So that's grown here on this chart from $1.6 million to $3.4 million. The $3.4 million was the 2023 contribution. And you can see for each of the last 8 years, the road commission has also elected to make an additional contribution above what was recommended by the actuaries. So for 2023, that was an additional $500,000. So again, I said at the beginning, the road commission's been very responsible with its legacy costs. This is a tremendous track record of not just making what's required, but additional contributions each year out of the road commission's budget. Doing so will eventually pay off and see that funded status continue to increase. Unfortunately, with the market declines in 2022 and some past assumption adjustments and other headwinds, it's probably not where anyone here would like it to be, but you're doing the right thing. You're making the required contributions plus additional amounts. And like I said, that will eventually turn around and start to be positive. And certainly we don't know what the actuary's calculation of the liability is going to be for 2023, but certainly the market has improved significantly. So the asset side will be up, and I would anticipate the funded ratio to be something more than the 51% it was at the end of 2022, but exactly where we'll have to wait for the actuary report to come in the next couple months.
Questions? Commissioner Green?
The actuarially determined contribution, is that a function, is that an estimate of the lifespan of the participant or no?
That's one factor in it. So it takes the level of benefits that are promised to retirees. It factors in how many are currently receiving benefits at what rates, how many of the active employees are expected to be eligible for a pension once they leave the road commission, and then what the future value of that will be. So it includes how long they live, as well as the rate of return on the investments that are in the trust, as well as many other factors, including inflation. So there are a lot of assumptions that go into it. None of them are going to be exactly right. So that's why it's updated every year to see what the actual results were and what impact that has on the future benefits. But there are a tremendous amount of assumptions that go into it to ultimately spit out what the required contribution is for a given year. And that annual contribution includes what was earned during the year by current employees, plus a percentage of the underfunding to date. to eventually make up that difference and get to 100%. So they wouldn't say because the plan's underfunded, you have to put in that entire amount in 1 year. It smooths it out over a number of years so that in 10, 15, 20 years, if everything were to hold true, you'd get to 100% funding.
Thank you.
Commissioner Yamas, did you have a question?
I did, but I think he answered it. It was about the, why we can't see you answered it. The numbers are not gonna come out for a couple of
For
months.
2023,
20
correct.
For 2023, right? Okay.
I
Commissioner Mc-
just want to add on to that. When do the numbers come out? Because it's April now, so.
Typically in May or June, MERS sends out the
Oh, okay,
evaluations
almost
for
there.
all.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, those reports come from MERS. MERS hires an actuarial firm and they do all the MERS actuarials to reduce costs. So it takes a lot of time to do all those calculations and reports. We anticipate that by the end of June, we'll have that for you. So we'll definitely give that update. I'm very excited to see that because that will be reflective of our pension grant. And that additionally, I'm hopeful that given the market performance last year and the pension grant, we will be at or near that 60% threshold, which is what we've been targeting for. And you can see as we've been marching and we were ever so close in 2021, and then the market dropped with that pension grant and the additional performance of the market last year. I think we're going to be real close. So Dan and I will be watching that closely, and we'll be excited, hopefully, to share good news with you when we receive that report in June. And then that would then be reflected in next year's year-end audit financials. So.
Thank you.
And remind me, the 60% funded ratio is a state requirement. In the past several years, Dan and his team have proposed a plan for reaching that 60% that has been approved every year. You've submitted it, as I recall.
That's correct. And if we were to achieve that 60% or greater, then we don't have to request a waiver and we'd be fulfill our requirement as identified by the state law.
My goal is to keep going.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we're trying to trend in that direction. The graph shows that, and we're hopefully going to get there at one point. And just as a reminder to the board, in 2012 we made that change, and so employees hired after 2012, the multiplier went down. So therefore, our long-term liability, hopefully it'll help us achieve that goal.
Any other questions on this? No, okay. Any other comments from us? No, okay.
Right.
Back to
you.
you, Keith.
Thank you. Last slide, what we refer to as OPEB, other post-employment benefits, it's essentially retiree healthcare. So similar measure to pension where it's an actuarial evaluation performed each year to update assumptions, trends, and actual results. This is a plan for the Road Commission that covers 173 total participants, 130 retirees, and 43 current employees who are potentially eligible for retiree healthcare. Total liability for, as measured by the actuary, is about $26.2 million, and that is 77% funded, which is a tremendous result for a retiree healthcare plan. Unlike the pension side, where the actuarially determined contributions are constitutionally required by the state of Michigan to be made on an annual basis, really the only true requirement for a retiree healthcare plan is to make the actual benefit payments as they're due for current retirees each year. So that would be referred to as pay as you go. But the Road Commission has done a tremendous job of putting assets aside in a trust to fund this future benefits. And those assets have grown to over $20 million as of the end of 2023. And so here, whereas we are talking about the end of 2023, not the 1 year lag, like with the pension plan. But as of the end of 2023, which was a positive year, there were $20.1 million in the trust. And as I mentioned, it's a 77% funded plan. So the state threshold for retiree healthcare would be 40%. You're obviously well in excess of that. We expect that trend to continue and improve over time.
Questions?
This plan was also changed in 12, so I think it was closed. So that's why it's able to be better funded by putting the additional funding in because the benefits aren't eligible for new hires.
And my goal is to see where that line is that we cross, where we are fully funded. And just to be tracking with your bound document, are we about on what, page 28-ish?
25 would be the
25?
healthcare retiree footnote.
If I
Give
could,
us a minute. Go ahead, Matt.
yeah, just one further comment. Thank you, Gene. You taking the word right out of my mouth. That was what I was going to also let you know, the board commissioners. Basically, in that 2012, that's where retiree healthcare, full healthcare is no longer a benefit for employees hired after 2012. That's one of the reasons why the need hasn't grown tremendously. What we do provide though, and I wanted to highlight this as well, is a healthcare savings plan. So for those that are, although they don't receive healthcare, but they have a healthcare savings plan. So basically that's a fund that's going to grow as they work here and be available to them for when they do go into retirement for costs associated with health issues, healthcare.
And do we contribute to that as
We do
well on their
contribute.
behalf?
Yep, it's a split.
Okay.
That's all I had planned to go over in terms of financial statement highlights. I should close by the comment I forgot at the beginning, which is that the financial statements received an unmodified opinion. It's a clean audit report and the highest level of assurance we can use to set up financial statements. So that's absolutely what the road commission should expect on an annual basis, and that's what we're happy to provide again for 2023. Again, I want to thank the Director of Finance and IT and his team, as well as the others throughout the road commission who assisted with the audit. We actually started fieldwork late in January, so less than a month after the end of the year. So Dan and his team were extremely well prepared and did a lot of work to do so on a very timely basis. That allowed us to finish the audit, provide drafts to the county for inclusion in their financial statements, and still be here all done, ready to go, everything all tidied up in mid-April to give you results. So that's tremendous. We're still starting audits for other entities with December 31st year ends, and some of them will be going right up until their June 30 reporting deadline, but it's never been the case here.
Commissioners, any questions in the larger document as you went through it? Anything you want Gene and Keith or Matt or Dan to address at all? No? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dan, Matt, anything you want to
No.
expand on or ask them to address or?
I just wanted to say thank you. Great job again, presenting the material. I know it's a lot, for commissioners, for you as well. Thank you for, your thoughts and questions. It's an important document that it's important to get a health check on our financials every year. And this is a great presentation. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Ackerman, anything? No? I'd just like to say thank you again for providing these materials in advance, so we had a chance to go over them. I know that's something I've nagged, and I appreciate receiving them. That's how I spent my weekend. So thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Or need for a break.
I was just gonna say, we got through that a little faster than anticipated. If you're willing to push through, we could go on to the next subject.
Commissioners, 5 minutes?
Can I have
You're
5
good?
minutes?
Keep going? I'm good. Let's take a brief break. 9:30. Let's come back by 9:45. How's that? All right, welcome back, everybody. And I just want to make note that Commissioner Sanders, member of the Washtenaw County Board of Commissioners, is with us. And our communications manager pointed out that she was here earlier as well. And hello to Commissioner Smers, wherever you are right now. So, Matt, ball to you.
All right, next up on our agenda, as we kind of foreshadowed, was the 2024 first quarter budget review. And again, we have Mr. Ackerman to help us through that.
Hello again, Dane Ackerman, Director of Finance and IT. I don't know if I should keep repeating my name and title, but I guess probably should, I don't know.
habits.
That's fine.
We
You
don't
know who
want-
I am
we
by
don't
now.
want Stating you, Dan.
Exactly. Well, I appreciate your time and attention for our 2023 financials. And as I stated, I think fiscally, the road commission had a good year. The caveat is, as Matt pointed out, carryovers. So a lot of that is if you don't spend it in one year, you're spending it in the next. So we want to make sure if we were anticipating spending some things in 2023, i.e. salt barn, some, road equipment and so on, we want to make sure we carry that money over into 2024. Because obviously we didn't spend it last year, we'll spend it this year. So that's going to be a big theme in this presentation today.
Did you have a,
Nope,
no, you're just,
just watering eye.
all right, all
My
right.
apologies.
I brought tears to his eyes.
You did.
Do you have that effect? Well,
Yeah, no. Okay, so we'll talk first about, so again, this is the first quarter 2024 review. We'll talk first about revenue. Our favorite Michigan Transportation Funds. So we have seen some increased estimates, not by a tremendous amount.
Mhm.
Our year-end 2023 Michigan Transportation Funds came in slightly higher. But we only have 2 months of actual activity, so we thought we'll wait until the second quarter. If the trends continue, hopefully we can make a positive adjustment for what we think we're going to receive from Michigan Transportation Funds in 2024. But at this point, we're holding off, we're monitoring, and again, we'll talk about that more in the second quarter. Any questions on that? Because obviously it's important to the road commission, the Michigan
that's on
Transportation
page
Funds.
5 in our budget report from Dan.
I will mention, these are the reports that Dan oftentimes refers to in the board packet. We get monthly reports. We roughly get 3 million a year, month, 3 million a month, which would equate to the 36 million budgeted for the year. If we see it trending above that 3 million watermark, that's where we may make that adjustment in second quarter. That was one of the positives for the close of 23, where our MTF was higher than budgeted. And that's a good place to be, so that we're pleasantly surprised. We don't want to overestimate our revenue and then have a shortfall. That would be not a good situation. And our past practice has been pretty conservative. So that's how we're approaching this as well.
And I want to compliment you and Emily and Cheryl and Matt and everybody else for this document. It's come a long way in terms of descriptions, explanations, illustrations.
Yep.
Really helpful.
Yes.
So thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that, at first when Emily reached out to me as far as revamping the whole thing, I said, well, what's wrong with our current one? But it is a much more, I hate to say this term, user-friendly document. And it does have a lot more, valuable information, and the format is better and more professional. So yeah, certainly I'm really proud to at least have a small role in the revamped document.
And Tiffany and Aaron and Emma, I'm sure all have their finger in this too. So thank you for making it
Yeah.
appealing and a little less intimidating visually.
Yeah, Tiffany's really good. She has a schedule of, due dates, if you will, when certain things need to happen. And it's always my goal to try to give them some time to help put the document together, because it's definitely a heavy lift. But, Aaron and Tiffany, they do a great job. They're great to work with. And, it certainly is a team effort for sure. So yeah, Michigan Transportation Funds, very important. And as Matt stated, we're never going to get that exactly right from year to year, especially you see all the months of fluctuations. But conservatively, you want to get as close as you can, but hopefully there's additional Michigan Transportation Funds than you budget for, that it's always easier to add than subtract. So as far as township revenues, okay, I've mentioned carryovers again here, but we had some 2023 township agreement work that got carried over into 2024, I believe in Pittsfield and Ypsilanti Township. And so we needed to carry the revenues we're expecting to receive from the townships, as well as the expenditures, as you'll see that as well. Also, this is new. There's an agreement with Ypsilanti Township for Huron Road at Brinker Way. So there's a new agreement there, and we wanted to make sure we add that to our budget.
And we're on page 8 of your big document, I
Okay.
think. I have, any questions? One thing I want to ask for clarification, Dan, on page 8, third paragraph, it talks about the 1.5 million in culvert improvements.
Yes,
Our organization contributed what, a $500,000 of that 1.5?
I believe that's correct. I
Okay.
believe the total program is $2 million, 1.5 from the townships, and then 500,000 from the road commission.
I will say on the culverts, we're gonna continue to see those agreements roll in. And for a lot of these agreements that are gonna be on the board agenda, typically, if we think we're gonna accomplish it this year, we'll get it added to the budget. But in most cases, a lot of these second phase of this grant program, these culverts will get done, they'll get permitted this year and constructed next year. So,
But we'll show them as an expenditure this year?
Nope.
And then as a carryover?
no, we
No.
would only, if we anticipate it getting built in this year, we'll add to the budget. So it won't be anything until next year, quite likely, that it'll get, as we do budgeting for 25.
Okay.
And I believe the local road spreadsheet has the culverts we're planning on doing this year.
They are.
So
They're
in your
one of the
packet, we have-
appendix. Yep.
Yeah, in the appendix, we have primary and local roads, and under local roads, you'll see all the culverts we're planning on completing.
That's J,
Appendix J, that's correct.
which starts on, well, anyway, here it is.
Not page 30.
Right.
Can I
Oh,
ask a
Commissioner Green,
question?
I'm sorry.
Okay, so culverts will typically get a contribution, correct?
Yes, as part of the local road program,
Right.
we have identified for if we have a culvert that's 5 feet or bigger, that's where we ask for that contribution.
But with bridges, they're typically our responsibility totally.
If it's on a local road, the same situation would be true. So
Okay.
if it's a local road and it's a bridge that we want to accomplish, it'd be a 50-50 split. The only exception to that is if we were to apply for funds and we're recipients of a grant for the bridge fund and it's on a local road, then we don't ask for a contribution because we've got our usually it's about 80% of the project is funded with the bridge program grant.
I see. Okay, thank you.
What's that?
Mhm.
Okay. Ben, anything? Good. Okay.
Some slight changes to our federal aid revenues. Miller at Zeeb, there was a bit of a decrease in federal funds that will be picked up by the road commission. And there were just some other minor changes to federal aid that we just wanted to reflect at this time.
Why was there a decrease?
We had to, because of the right-of-way acquisition. So the right-of-way acquisition bumped us to a new fiscal year. So some of the funds that we had anticipated, it's by and large funded with safety funds, but we added some urban dollars, the urban dollar amount. When you go to obligate projects later in the year, because right-of-way pushed us later in the year, think of it as a checking account. That number goes down as the year progresses. And so we had to make an adjustment on the urban dollars. That's one of the challenges in doing projects that require right-of-way acquisition. You want to do it as early as possible, but sometimes, for instance, this one was MDOT had reached out and said, you know what, we've got extra safety funds. Would you be able to get it done? And we said, you know what, we're not going to turn away an opportunity to leverage outside dollars. We're going to get this done. And so there wasn't a lot of time frame to get the design and right-of-way acquisition. So we lost a little bit when it came to those urban dollars. Ultimately, it's still going to be a really successful project, and we were able to obligate all the other funds without any issues.
Brent, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, I did. Brent Schlack, Director of Engineering. I know Matt covered how those funds and are basically, they call it the obligational authority. And we ran out of obligational authority in 23 towards the end of the year. That's what Matt was talking about. And so those funds were expended through the year. And so unfortunately, by the time we were ready to obligate these funds, the federal dollars weren't available. So we did go out and find some additional federal dollars, but not to the extent that we originally had programmed.
It gets complicated quickly.
Yes, it does.
And really, the story to be
Thanks, Brent.
told here was, we had initially applied for safety funds. We got granted a couple of projects, and then MDOT came back to us a little later and said, you know what, we've got extra funds to obligate. We'd like you to do it. And they trusted us that we could get it to the finish line before the end of the fiscal year. And we did that. And Watts does a great job of helping us with all those financial hoops at the end when we're trying to obligate, because they, especially late in the year, MDOT's year, their fiscal year is October 1. End of October. So we have to have it all done by the end of October. And that checking account, so to speak, for federal fund obligational authority keeps going down. So oftentimes you're seeing us bid projects very early in the year because we don't want to have that risk. In this case, because we were asked late in the game to do this project, that's what we assumed a little bit of that risk for the local funds. We still had plenty of state and federal dollars. That's the majority funding for this project. And then anything less than that to make up is Michigan transportation funds. But it'll be a great safety project, a nice enhancement. And it just got closed this last Monday. And it's just right up the road. So we're looking forward to this project.
Did that cause your detour, John?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
It's gonna be great when it's done, John.
I'm envious. I wish we had the same thing going in at Webster Church in North Dakota.
Well,
Yeah.
you can talk to our managing director about that.
Yep.
Mr. Ackerman.
Okay. Okay, let's talk expenditures. Carryovers. So again, it's like Groundhog's Day, right? So there was about a little over $800,000 in road equipment that we thought could possibly be received in 2023. Certainly you are aware, and we've shared with you some of the challenges with receiving road equipment timely. But talking with Mike Livesey and Adam Lape, you know, hey, there's a possibility we might receive it. We did not, but we want to make sure we carry those dollars over into 2024. There were also some yard and storage projects. Again, possibility of being completed in 2023 was not, so we need to carry that over. And the thing I want to point out is the salt barn, because that's significant. So $1.7 million. So again, our financial situation in 2023 looked better, if you will, by $1.7 million. But that's because we didn't complete the salt barn. We knew we probably wouldn't, but we were conservative, maybe a little too conservative, I don't know. But I guess I'd rather be that way than be surprised, like, oh geez, you know, we thought a portion of the salt barn wouldn't be built until 2024, and you know, the weather cooperated and so on. So again, we budgeted 100% of that being completed. Last year was not. $1.7 million will need to be carried over for 2024. Plus, given the nature of our fund balance in 2023 and where we are looking at our fund balance, which we'll talk about a little bit later, we thought we could actually add a couple of capital outlay projects. So we're planning on purchasing a grader. There's some projects for the main yard parking lot and Southeast Service Center, some shed repairs. These were capital projects that were kind of on Adam's wish list, if you will. And we felt there was capacity there for the budget for this year. So we are recommending adding those in this first quarter.
And these are projects in addition to what was already approved back in December.
Commissioner Green.
Does the road equipment include any vehicles or no?
Yeah, I forget the breakdown. It's primarily heavy trucks.
Yeah, heavy.
Primarily
trucks.
heavy trucks.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that?
I don't see any.
Again, looking at where we ended 2023 as far as our fund balance and projections for 2024. Initially, when we initially set the 2024 preliminary budget, some of these things were not included because of where our fund balance was ending up. We had projected about $11 million, the initial budget. But we felt comfortable enough to restore some of these. Our seal coat program, which we love, is about $500,000. Again, this is additional expenditures. Crack seal of 120. And was Tyler Road, Matt, was that included initially, or was that on our wish list, or was that just something that came up? I
So
forget.
definitely, this is a great example of Mother Nature handing us something to do. This was as a result of one of the late summer storms that ended up closing Tyler Road near the bridge, and also it's a dam as well. The complicating factor. As you can see, this is just a picture of the washed out situation. And we finally have a plan and a scope of work and some real budget numbers associated with repairing that road and getting it reopened. We still have some permitting challenges in that. We've got to work with Eagle because there is a regulated dam. But we're adding this cost to repair the road to the budget that we didn't have previously. We didn't have all the costs, and we didn't have an actual numbers and wasn't sure how this was going to get accomplished. Now we do. We're adding that back into this as part of first quarter budget. And the plan is to get through the permitting hurdles and then ultimately repair them and reopen the road.
So in anticipation of Commissioner Green's question, what is the Ypsilanti Township obligation towards this repair?
None. It is a primary roadway.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And this is a great example of why you want to try and maintain as healthy of a fund balance as you can, because we are going to have surprises, and hopefully we can address those as best we can. And I'm really glad that we were able to add this. So, and Tiffany's picture is great. So, not that it's the most beautiful picture, but I think it really tells a story here. So,
It does.
yes.
What year was the Dexter tornado? That was
2012, I
another
believe.
surprise, yeah. Mhm.
Dexter tornado, what was the road that fell into the water?
Well, Dexter Pinckney was riddled with tree removals, and we were shredding timber debris for weeks on end.
That was a couple of years ago. Was it not Gottfredson? What was the road? Was it Ypsi Township? Remember we had an issue?
Grove Road.
Grove Road.
Grove
right.
Road had the
Grove Road's
erosion
another
issue.
example.
Yeah, just a
Mhm.
couple of years ago. Yep.
But that's why we want to, hopefully again, have a significant fund balance to be able to address, emergencies,
Right.
Mother Nature,
Unexpected, yeah.
whatever the case may be. I think we may be due for a more severe winter. I think at some point, I think we're probably due for that. Sorry, Anna. But
We're ready.
but we will be ready, and we can go ahead and take those on.
Okay.
Some other increases, Jackson Road, between Barker and Wagner. We've already kind of talked about Miller Zeev a little bit, and then some of the HMA paving projects. Matt, I don't know if you want to kind of speak to.
Absolutely.
I've heard there's several of them, right?
Yeah, so this is
HMA means,
hot mix asphalt.
thank you.
So these are the paving. That's why the picture's there. So we have a picture to go along with the acronym. The hot mix asphalt countywide contract is a big year for paving. So in the millage, and also we have several projects that were federally funded. I believe there's a couple of buyouts still that we're accomplishing through our countywide project, and we saw an increase in costs. As we all can expect, construction costs continue to have inflationary amounts, and this year, because we have a heavy workload, particularly with our paving projects, we had to adjust that HMA paving project. So in the packet, I believe it would be Appendix I. Anything that's yellow typically is a change in pricing that were estimates and now we've got a signed contract with Cadillac Asphalt is the contractor we're using. And so that's a reflection of estimates to an actual contract.
Commissioner Green?
Questions on that?
Just a question.
Sure.
We use Cadillac asphalt a lot.
Yeah, so we bid that out, and then typically there's provisions for extension of that contract. But they do a lot of the work. So Cadillac, we're a unique county whereby we actually have 2 asphalt plants owned by Cadillac Asphalt in our county. So their trucking cost is minimal, and the plants they have 2 options for production. Both there used to be two paving companies, but essentially Cadillac bought out what was formerly Barrett Paving. So you might have heard that name previously. So Cadillac has 2 plants in and around Washtenaw County. The other contractor occasionally will bid work and is successful as Ajax. Ajax is another big asphalt company in the state. The other one is Michigan Paving Materials. It's actually under the same umbrella as Cadillac. They just use a different name, and they're more on the west side of the state. So
And our procurement policy says lowest qualified bidder,
correct.
correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So you'll see a lot of our bid awards. There'll be 2 bidders when we're large hot mix asphalt paving projects. Sometimes when you're doing like a roundabout project, the bulk of the work isn't the paving, it's actually all of the earthwork and underground. So you'll see different variety of contractors. But for our countywide contract for paving, typically we get 2 bidders. And they're both MDOT pre-qualified, as you referred to.
Anything else you want to add to that, Dan? No?
So I think Matt did a nice job explaining that.
Okay.
Couple other increases, traffic and safety projects, about $250,000, of which the countywide forestry, I believe, was new, right? Didn't we zero that out?
Yeah, well, I think it was an additional
An
amount.
additional, right, an additional amount. Again, there's a lot of forestry work that needs to be accomplished and I believe this was on our deferred list. And then I think there was a slight change with the pavement marking. Other expenditures, Commissioner Fuller, I know this is near and dear to your heart, and I think the rest of the board as well. Again, based on where our fund balance was trending for the year-end 2024, we did not feel comfortable with that other post-employment additional payment of $500,000. As Plant Moran shared with the board, that's something we've been making for several years now. So it was not included in our initial 2024 budget that was approved. But again, given where our situation ended last year and where our projected fund balance is supposed to be with all these changes, we felt comfortable adding the $500,000 in. Again, I definitely support doing that. And, I think it's important. Commissioner Fuller, I share the same goal as you. I'd like to see the trust we have for retiree health insurance funded at 100%. I think that would, part of me wonders, what do you do with that? Can you just use the trust going forward? But those would be good problems to have. So that certainly is a goal of mine as well. We at this time did not include the additional pension payments. Again, we want to see what things are looking like in the second quarter. We want to see what the MERS report is looking like with that $4.5 million grant money in that as well, and see where our funded levels are. But, that's something that we will consider probably in the second quarter. Also, in meeting with Adam and his staff, we did want to, there were some inflationary increases for janitorial services, so we did want to make that change. I want to say the pricing we were paying was from several years ago. We changed who we were working with and, increased costs, but we also feel there's going to be better service as well. But we want to reflect that change.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Yamas.
So the janitorial services, we contract that out. That's not in-house, correct?
Yeah, we actually did a bid process and selected a new firm, and they're doing an outstanding job. The floors have never looked so good. And so we've got a higher level of service and we got a little bit of an inflationary cost, so we were adjusting that budget there.
But that was competitively bid, yes?
Correct,
Yes.
absolutely.
Oh,
Yep, that award came to the board under consent.
Commissioner Green.
Is it okay to ask who won the bid?
Sure. Adam, would you mind coming up?
Aren't you glad you came to this working session, all of you?
Good
Morning, Adam Lake, Director of Operations, the professional group, that's their title, the professional group.
The professional group.
They're currently under contract. They clean, Ford Field and a few other stadiums and some of the bigger buildings in Detroit.
Are
So
they
that,
local?
in theory, yes, they're from within the area. They've hired people that are from the area to do our service.
Okay.
Yeah, so pretty good group, that was an expected increase, as we went out to bid for that. We wanted to up our expectations and kind of our level of service, as Matt was saying. So we expected to see some type of increase. So within the first month or two, we started, being able to kind of isolate how much the increase was. And so then for the budgeting process, we requested that increase to be made. So that kind of brings us to this point.
And
to
how
move
long
us
is that contract?
I don't know. I
That'll
don't
be-
remember.
a year, and then I think we have 3 optional years built in, very similar to most of our contracts
Okay,
that we have currently, with optional years for extension.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Yamas?
What's the name of the group again? I was taking.
The
writing down.
professional group,
The professional group.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Adam, and just for my recollection, did our previous firm, did they even submit a bid on that?
no, they actually worked with us a little bit and never did bid on it. I believe the business themselves, they were ready for retirement age and just to go on to other things, maybe consolidate services a little bit. We were probably one of their bigger clients from what we understand. So I think they were just reaching a point in their career and a point in the business's lifetime that they were just gonna change pace a little bit, so.
Any
Thank
other
you.
questions on this topic?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Adam.
You're welcome.
All right, so what does all this mean? So again, our 2023 fiscal outcome was positive. The initial year-end budget that the board passed for 2023 projected our fund balance to be about $15 million. And the actual fund balance came in at $30 million because of, MTF being a little bit higher. We had higher interest earnings, all the carryover that we shared with you. When you looked at all those things, the actual fund balance was $30 million, which is great. So for 2024, for Q1, again, the preliminary budget that the board passed had a fund balance of $11 million. With all the changes I mentioned, with adding OPEB, with some of the changes with road equipment and so on, our projected fund balance is still at $18 million, which I would think is, I feel is a healthy place to be. If you recall, Plant Moran has recommended your fund balance should be about 15 to 25% of expenditures, and that's about 19%, I believe. So I feel like, would I like to be higher? Of course, but it doesn't cause any alarm from me as far as, getting our fund balance too low. If that makes sense.
And I would point out, I think Ann Arbor schools hit 2%,
I think 1% actually, I heard.
which triggered some attention.
I think 5% even triggered
Yeah.
some attention, and now the 1% is really causing a lot of challenges for them.
Joanne?
Madam Chair. So is that 44%, that 18.4 million? Is that?
The 18.4 is actually about 19% of expenditures for 2024. What you're referring to is the $30 million as a percentage of expenditures for year-end
Oh,
2023.
that one.
Mhm. Yeah,
Okay.
that's something that the auditors mentioned.
Okay. So what is the percentage estimate of the 18.4?
It's 19.
Oh, you were
Yes.
saying it's
Mhm.
19. Okay, thank you.
No, I think it's an important conversation to have, because it is a snapshot in time, and I appreciate Tiffany and Dan putting this slide together. Because, you can see at one point in time, we estimated, our fund balance at 15 million year end of 23. That snapshot and 30 because of all the reasons why. And now, looking at Q1 adjustments, our preliminary fund balance for the end of this fiscal year, we had initially estimated 10.5, and now we're sitting better at 18.4. And that's even with all those things that we added to the budget. So we're well positioned. We don't have that pot of gold sitting off to the side. We have a lot of things that we already have planned to do, and we'll continue to monitor. If we think we have the ability to accomplish more during Q2, we will do that. One of the things that's on Dan and I's mind, and I'm sure the commissioner as well, is looking at pension. So once we receive that report in June, we'll see where we're at, and we may elect to recommend to this board an additional pension payment, as we've done in the past. And there might be other things that come to mind. We're still bidding projects. We're still making sure that we're falling in line with our contracts. A good example is Jackson Road. Even though we added to the budget for that project, because there's more needs out there than what anticipated. We're at the time of the millage, we're putting more MTF money, but yet we haven't bid that contract yet. So once we get bids, sometimes bids come in higher and we have to make an adjustment. So all those things will be known, along with our township agreements will be known by Q2 adjustments. So that's why we look at this quarterly. We take a very monitored approach to our budgeting process, and hopefully by the end of the year, we're better off than what we anticipated, because we run a conservative budgeting process.
So we tend to underestimate, and when things come in better than we planned, then we'll make adjustments then.
I mean, you want your budget to be meaningful, right? So, we're not gonna say we're only getting 30 million in Michigan Transportation Funds and you get 36 million. So it should be meaningful, but if you want to run a conservative budget, you should slightly underestimate your revenues and slightly overestimate your expenditures. And then your bottom line, as and I think we have a pretty good track record here. So your bottom line is you're in a better financial position, at the end of the year.
And it's also a balanced approach, because we have so many needs. It'd be irresponsible to take and keep $30 million in our fund balance constantly, because we have so many needs on the road network, equipment, facilities. We can't just hold that and just let it sit there and gain interest when we'd be losing ground for our fleet. We'd be losing ground for our pavement condition. So it is definitely a balanced approach.
Commissioner McCollum.
Madam Chair, Matt, were you talking about with the Jackson Road, is that the concrete rehabilitation?
That's correct.
Project? Okay,
Absolutely.
that you're
Yep.
talking about. the
And that
changes.
one's listed as a primary road investment in Appendix I as well.
Okay,
So Jackson Road, that is a millage funded project along with Michigan Transportation Funds as well.
okay, thank you.
Mhm.
And you'll notice no reference to winter maintenance and any adjustments, but I did want to speak to that briefly. We looked at the numbers, we looked at our salt expenditures, we looked at wages and fuel consumption, and basically felt that no adjustment was needed at this time. We feel like we are trending, pretty much where we're budgeting, which seems a little odd given, the nature of our winter, but January was not kind to us. And we had some ice storms and, between the policies and procedures we have in place and the nature of the storms, we didn't feel that we could make any adjustments for winter maintenance at this time. So I just wanted to bring that up because that's usually a part of the first quarter discussion. So any questions on that at all, or?
And wages encompasses overtime, right?
Right.
When we have
Yes.
those unexpected
Mhm.
events.
And also keeping in mind, we have the thought of winter on the backside of our budget because we're calendar year.
Right.
We have to account for, hey, we still have winter budget for November, December.
Yeah.
Maybe even October sometimes. So.
One question.
Commissioner Green.
I'm just curious. I'm assuming that concrete costs more than asphalt.
I believe so.
That's a very good question. Oftentimes, people will talk about the life cycle costs of pavement. Concrete may be more expensive for initial investment, but it also performs better if it's a high commercial corridor, and long-term, oftentimes will outperform from an economic standpoint, asphalt pavement. So Jackson Road corridor is a very commercial corridor, and it was decided long ago that we were gonna go with a concrete pavement.
Okay.
Phase two, we've had some issues with concrete pavement, the joints did not perform as expected. In fact, we've had to invest in phase two more so than phase one, which was done much earlier than the phase two. So sometimes you have those issues. In fact, there's a current project going on in M14 where they're having to address the concrete joints. A lot of that, it ends up being patchwork. So what we've chosen to do is really focus in on part of the bad section of Jackson Road for a complete remove and replace. They call it inline pavement so that it's not patchwork. Particular bad sections in and around Zeeb Road for the westbound lane. So that's a long answer for a short question. The concrete typically is a little pricier than the asphalt when it comes to initial costs, but long-term, it may be more beneficial, particularly for a commercial corridor.
Okay, thank you.
And this slide here has hopefully the answer to Commissioner McCollum's question regarding the projected fund balance of 18.4 million. So again, this is all the changes we're proposing in the first quarter, and that would still leave us at 19% of expenditures. Again, Plant Moran said between 15 and 25. But obviously there's a lot of work to be done. There's equipment to be bought. We want to attract and retain the best and brightest if we can. So all these competing needs and, also, trying to have as healthy of a fund balance as we can with all these expenditures. And it looks like I got ahead of myself. So we want to obviously put as much money as we can justify into the road system. We want to invest in our employees as best as we can. We have our financial obligations with our pension and our OPEB. And, we want to make sure we're investing in our trucks and graders, and, some of our facilities are getting older, and we want to make sure that we're making sure we can invest in them as well. So, with all the things in the mix, I think staff does a great job in, coming up with a great plan, but making sure we're still fiscally sound, which obviously is very important as well. So.
Commissioner McCollum.
I just want to say, Dan, that I like this picture because you're balancing things. It's not one more over here or
Right.
more over there. It
Yep.
takes a balance to make sure that things run efficiently. I like this picture.
Yep, so that's all Tiffany, so thank you.
Of course.
For the graphic there, but yeah, and I do like that it doesn't necessarily show importance over one over the other.
Right.
But these are all important to us,
Yeah.
so, and how can we justify one expense over another, so.
Yeah, these visual aids help tell the story,
Thank you.
absolutely. So thank you.
So I believe the last board meeting, we kind of talked a little bit about, what sort of controls do we have in place? How can we guarantee there are no errors? What sort of things are we doing to just make sure we're doing the best we can and are being accountable and being responsible with the public's funds? So I just did a couple of slides here to share with the board. I feel we have efficient procedures in finance and in IT. We try to automate as much as possible. Even paying vendors via ACH is a more efficient procedure and, less, kind of a fraud prevention procedure as well. The quarterly, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry,
Yeah,
didn't
go
mean
ahead.
to interrupt you, but I remember you talking about there were still a few vendors that hadn't, have they changed now to the ACH?
So we are at about 80% ACH payments to our vendors. So still about 20% that we're paying via check. Some vendors have stated they are not set up to receive ACH payments. They tend to be some of the smaller, I guess, mom and pop businesses that we do business with. Some of the utility companies, which Commissioner Fuller has also been assisting us with that as well, and we've been successful with several of them. Will we be at 100%? Probably not. I'm hoping maybe 95%. I think we're trending in the right direction. I would put us up against any other road commission in the entire state as far as our ACH payments. A lot of them are still just paying with a check. So I feel we're well ahead of the game, but I mentioned Jamie Kraus in finance, and she handles accounts payable. She's very passionate about getting vendors signed up. Whenever we have new contracts, we are writing that into our agreements to, the only way we're going to pay you is via ACH. I think staff is doing a tremendous job. Even getting to 80%, I'm surprised we're that high right now. And, we'll continue to see, what other grounds we're going to make, but at some point it's going to get even more challenging to get those last few, but we'll certainly continue to move forward with that.
Thank you.
Yep.
That's my mission this year, Dan.
All right, good. That's good.
I'm on it.
Can Commissioner Fuller qualify for the right-of-way awards?
Yes.
Yeah, maybe. Quarterly budget reviews, so important. Obviously, we talk about it in November, December, for the next year. But we want to make sure we're revisiting things because obviously things change. Again, first quarter, obviously no changes for winter, but that's typically been an adjustment we've had to make. Again, where do we come out of the previous year, which is we're in now? Second quarter, we'll know our township agreements and can adjust for that. But I think it's important to revisit it and not just put it on a shelf somewhere and say, oh, we're good for the year. So, the fact that we have quarterly reviews is great. And, we look at it more than on a quarterly basis. I probably look at it every day, probably a lot more than I should. But, we always want to monitor that in case anything were to change, if some unusual things come up or so on. The fact that we switched to a line item budget, Commissioner Fuller, you may have been around, or that was a huge change. We used to budget via Act 51, so we would budget based on winter maintenance for primary roads, primary road construction. But staff would say, well, what's our salt budget? We'd say, we don't know. It's in this area, and this area, and so on. And changing to line item budget, now we have the operations departmental budget, and we have a line item for salt, a budget item for salt. So I think that's made things more clear, and things like training and so on. And I think staff can really, just get a better grasp of things. And it's allowed for a lot more dialogue. And, I really like all the meetings I have with the other departments. And we try to keep that open dialogue that, I don't know all the answers. And I look at it one way, but the departments tend to look at it a different way, maybe Matt as well. And maybe we come to the same conclusion, maybe we don't, but then we research and we say, well, maybe the janitorial services should be increased a little bit and so on. So, I think, we've got a great team, and I think, we have some really meaningful discussions, but I think that makes your budget stronger if everybody feels valued and can contribute and ultimately be accountable for it too. So something else in the second quarter, we'll have a look ahead. So we'll look at the budget in 2025 and 2026. We'll know at least some of the projects, we've received some grant funding and so on. So we'll at least know what some of those projects are. But again, you want to make sure if it looks problematic in say 2026, what are some things we can do now to head that off at the pass or just to have that awareness? And so, I really like how we've started looking at the out years, but I also caution, and Matt used this, term a couple times, it's just a snapshot, so once we provide those out years, it's going to change. So, but I think, sometimes when organizations look at out years, they say, okay, we're done, and they don't revisit it, but we should constantly revisit because things change all the time. But it is definitely good to look ahead and make sure, are we still in a comfortable spot financially? And is it sustainable and so on? Or do we need to maybe start making some changes now? So I think that 2-year look ahead has really kind of helped with our budgeting process. Also, I won't always use this, but I feel like we have a good track record. And, just because I feel like we have a good track record doesn't mean we get complacent. But I do feel the last several years that, the things that we presented to the board and the conservative nature of our approach, I think, the numbers speak for themselves. Obviously, I don't tell Plant Moran what to put in the report. That's up to them. But certainly they've been able to share with you from year to year that, usually we come out a little bit better than what our year-end budgets were. And that's by design. So I, kind of stand by our track record and, obviously I'm coming on 30 years. Tracy in payroll, I think, has been here about 9 years and Jamie 3 or 4 years. So you have some continuity and, just, with seasoned staff, if you will. I think that helps. And I think that's kind of a challenge I've been seeing at some other agencies. You're seeing, I don't know if the boomers are retiring and maybe that transition hasn't been great. So obviously I think that the institutional knowledge that we bring, certainly helps with the process. And then the fiscally responsible fund balance, we take this very seriously. I think all of us do as a leadership team. And for me to say, board, here's our budget and our fund balance is, 1% of expenditures, we would probably never do that. We would have to get, I joke, and get out our red pen and look at what things do we need to possibly delete, or what road projects can't we do, or an extra payment for OPEB, what have you. But we always want to make sure that we feel comfortable and the board would feel comfortable with a budget that shows a responsible fund balance. Again, would I like it to be closer to 25% of expenditures? Of course. But we also have work to do, and we have, obligations to meet and so on. And I think over the years, we've come up with a great approach to things with the board's assistance, because I know there are times where the board maybe was a little concerned about things as well. And we take that to heart. And, I just feel like we have a good process. And again, a Tyler Road Bridge or whatever the case may be, when these things come up, that more times than not, we've been able to handle things or at least assist with it. So a few other things related to our controls and checks and balances. I could stand up here and say, board, trust me, right? Which, and I think you do to a certain level, but you also, you shouldn't blindly trust. And there are several outside agencies that are auditing us on a regular basis, Plant Moran being the largest or most significant. And certainly, their whole reputation would not be risked on saying anything that they didn't feel strongly about. So, and again, they're outside the road commission, so they're going to say in their opinion what they're seeing. So, and I think that's good. I think you want outside agencies to come in and evaluate, well, how is the road commission doing? If I'm saying everything's great and we don't make any errors or anything, then they could come in and either back that up or state to the contrary. I also receive an outside audit from the County Road Association Self-Insurance Fund or our workers' comp organization. Every year they come in and they audit me, and they just make sure how are we accounting for our, how we're paying our employees and what sort of functions they're providing for the agency and so on. So that's on an annual basis. MDOT's also auditing us on an annual basis for our state trunk line contract. So that's something that they're a bit behind. They're working on 2020 audit, but and I've had some conversations with them because it gets a little tiring when they ask me, 4 years ago, why did you do X, Y, or Z? I don't know. I barely know what I did last week, but so they're working and they've had some staffing challenges. But again, another independent agency that if there were any issues that they noticed, certainly they would not be shy sharing that with, management or the board. And then the Act 51 is that huge report I have to do every year, requirement by the state by May 1st. They also audit that report very extensively. There are a lot of checks and balances in there as far as targets we have to hit for, say, non-motorized expense. And so, every year that's something I need to submit, and either they accept the report or maybe they have some questions about it. And that's another state of Michigan agency, though, that is looking at our financials. So I think, you should have a level of trust, of course. Blind trust, no, definitely not. But then, if you have these agencies independent of the road commission that are looking at things, I think that's a nice check and balance as well, so.
I have one other thing to add on a project level. Anytime that we receive state or federal funds, every project is audited by the state. And oftentimes they're using outside consultants as well to perform that audit. So we go through the hoops quite frequently from a project basis and an overall budget basis. So it is that it's a very good checks and balance. It's trust but verify.
Right, exactly. Yep. And automation of processes, this was several years ago. The finance department went as paperless as we could justify. Sadly, you'll probably always need some amount of paper. But, I feel like, 80% of our processes went to paperless, which is great. The access to the information is instantaneous. Obviously we have great computers and networks and so on. And so the access to the information it's very quick to find it. And, just really always looking at our processes and procedures, trying to always move forward. Technology is changing every day. So we're certainly looking at, whenever you can automate things, the budget is about 80% automated. So utilizing some of the technology at my disposal, pivot tables and so on. So not 100%, probably never will be, but I do have other checks and balances to make sure. You don't want to just rely on your automated processes. You need to have checks and balances to make sure the information is accurate and correct. So we try to do a lot of that as well. Already kind of talked about experienced and knowledgeable staff. Again, I feel fortunate that I get to work with Tracy and Jamie every day. And I think we make a really good team. Great networking resources. So I don't know if I've been a part of a group that is so welcoming and so supportive as CRA. And, we have a listserv for all the finance and HR folks. If you have a question on anything, you can send it out to the listserv. It'll go immediately to all the road commissions. And almost immediately there are responses back. And, when I was first getting started many years ago, I turned to the other road commissions and they kind of helped train me. And I've, been able to return the favor, but it's just such a great group. No one feels they do things the best. This is the way I do things. Either maybe it works for you or maybe it doesn't, but it's been, a lot of times in the private sector, you're trying to climb the corporate ladder. And so there's competition and, maybe some jealousy and so on. And I've never seen that from the County Road Association, in particular with the finance folks, that they've always been welcoming. No question is, there's no dumb questions, and they've always been very helpful. And for that, I've been very appreciative, and I think it just helps, all of us, to be stronger, so. Checks and balances, kind of referred to that a little bit. I'm real big on checks and balances, and we're always looking to see if we can have more of those, just to make sure, again, as you're automating your processes, you should have other things to look at to compare and make sure that the information is accurate and correct. So we continue to look at refining that as well. And then lastly, the finance staff, we're auditing ourselves on a daily basis and each other. The ACH process, and this was a little bit assistance from Plant Moran. So Tracy Balkwell has access to our vendor area where she sets up a new ACH vendor. So let's say we have DTE, and Tracy would go in and set them up. She has to print. So here's a paper thing, but she has to print that out because I'm not allowed to have access to it because I'm the check and balance there. And then Jamie Kraus is actually paying them. But that is a good process and good controls to have in place. So say Tracy isn't setting something up for herself, or I'm in cahoots with her. You've got 3 individuals that are involved, and the process works really well. So that's just one example that, we are auditing. And so when I'm looking at Tracy's information, I'm making sure it's accurate and correct and so on. And so again, we audit ourselves constantly, but we also audit each other. But again, that makes the information stronger and hopefully minimizes any mistakes. So that's probably more than you cared to hear, but I just wanted to kind of share with the board some of the best practices that we have. And, like I said, we're all about continuous improvement, always trying to move forward as well. So we'll continue to do so. I don't know if there's any questions on any of that at all, but.
I just wanted to emphasize that I appreciate how detailed the line item budget is. It provides transparency, the board's responsibility fiscally to make sure that nothing's going off the rails.
Right.
And every meeting, we get a report like that, and questions, of course, are always welcomed by you. Demonstrate to me why this was paid this way, why isn't this much? Plant Moran, just as a point of information, always touches base with the chair of the board in advance of the audit. So I have a safe place, so to speak. If I've got a concern, I can say, this doesn't feel right. I'd like you to focus in on that. So it's just another illustration of how we're kind of making sure nothing's out of order. And then the automated records and processes, I think much of that is available to the public. So there's transparency on so many levels. And the culture here is we're not out to play gotcha.
Right.
We're out to make sure we have fiscal responsibility and integrity in the organization. If you've got a question, ask. We're not going to feel attacked or challenged. The whole point is to make sure we have good checks and balances in place. We're all working together towards spending the budget responsibly and serving the public, which is what our job is.
Correct. And I certainly welcome questions from the board, either in this setting, or I always say I'm always here, so feel free to email or call. But I think, you've asked some great questions, all of you, in the past, and I continue to welcome that. And I think, again, that makes things stronger as well. If the board has questions or concerns and they can be addressed, then, that's kind of, I see, part of your role too. And so but I've always appreciated the questions that I've received, so.
Commissioner Green.
Thank you. Is it my understanding that we received the highest rating from Plant Moran that they can give?
Sure.
Is that correct?
Yeah, an unqualified opinion, correct.
Okay.
They don't give stars like.
Yeah, they don't, there's no number system or anything, so. Yeah.
And one other question about the janitorial contract. What is the total amount of that contract, if you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, Adam, do you? Yeah, we can look that up for you. We'll get that to you.
But that is competitively bid, is it not?
Correct.
Is it? Okay.
So I think Adam's looking that up right now. Maybe I'll continue on and
Sure.
maybe is that okay?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We'll put a pin
Sorry,
in
sir.
there, as they say.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions about anything? Okay. So what's next? So the May 7th, board meeting, we'd have the first quarter budget with the proposed amendments, on the agenda for approval. And as always, if there's any changes to what you've seen today, we will communicate that to you. There'll be some slight changes as far as, I haven't closed the books yet, or those numbers haven't been reflected, so those are some minor changes. But if there's any budget adjustment changes, we certainly would communicate that with the board prior to, asking for your approval. And then, assuming that is approved, then we would look at the second quarter budget review as well as the look ahead for 2025 and 2026, and that would be in July. Any other questions?
I don't see any other comments from you or your staff, Matt?
I would just say, in the budget document, I think if you're accustomed and enjoy spreadsheets like I do, page 4 is,
Second only to Mr. Ackerman, I'm sure.
Right.
is true. He is the maker and keeper of our spreadsheet here. So the page 4 of the budget document, really just gives a number summary of all the things that we've discussed. And you can see, the proposed revisions, to both revenue and expenditures. And then down at the bottom, you can see, essentially those snapshots in time where we were at with the 23 and where we anticipate to be with the 24. So those are those numbers where, that snapshot at the auditors presented today was $30 million previously. That was year end, but where we anticipate being in 24 at year end is now 18.4, given all these changes that we've talked about.
Simply amazing. All these numbers agree with each other.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah, right.
I hope so.
Yes.
That checks
Yes.
and balance.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty amazing.
And again, we'll be making this recommendation at our first meeting in May. If you've got any questions or recommendations, concerns, please share them with us. This is your budget that goes before you to adopt. We want to make sure you're very comfortable in doing so.
And that's one of our few very concrete responsibilities as a
Absolutely.
board. Mhm.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
If there's a strong opinion, for instance, nope, we want to make that pension payment this quarter, that's fine. We're ready to do so. But again, the good news is we're going to do this again in July.
Right.
So
Right.
we're very nimble in that fact that we're able to do this at least twice. We don't do the third quarter because really the numbers are set by mid-year, and then we just do year end. So
And we have a menu that we look at, and if we have the funds available and your recommendation is positive. then
Absolutely.
Typically, we agree with you.
Yes.
mhm.
All right.
All right.
Great.
Thank you, Dan.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank your team for us as
Yes,
well.
I will.
Thank you, Dan.
Yep, thank you.
All right, Matt.
All right. Next on the agenda is an update on the renew and restore the 2025, 2028 roads and non-motorized millage.
Just let me ask commissioners, do you need a break? Anybody?
I do just.
All right, we're going to take a brief break for Commissioner Green. if
That'd be
that's
great.
okay.
It'll allow me to get set up as well.
Okay,
So thank you.
sure.
Thank
We'll
you.
take a 5-10 minute break and come back. Mr. Managing Director, ball to you.
Thank you, Chair. The topic we now are going to discuss is our roads and non-motorized millage. On the screen here that I'm sharing, we got some great news. April 3rd, our Board of Commissioners did pass the second reading of this resolution, which ultimately, when you get through all the whereases, ultimately gets to the millage language, which is a renew and restore. Their dates are a little different than ours because they actually collect the taxes this year. So it would be 2024. And then we recognize it as more 25 to 28, because those are the project years for us. So it is going to go on the ballot Tuesday, August 6th, 2024 for the typically the primary ballot. And so we received that good news, and I wanted to share that with you. And we have that resolution for our county board of commissioners, and several of you were in attendance for that meeting, so thank you. And what will happen now, we're finalizing our plan, the Washtenaw County Road Commission plan for those precious millage dollars. We want to make sure we've gone through the education events. As I discussed with you last time, reach out to the townships. In fact, we're still working through some of those priority lists. We'll be meeting with Webster Township here shortly, and York Township actually requested a change, which we reflected here. They moved from one primary road to the other. That was a higher priority. In that case, it was Sanford. If you look down in York Township, which is located just below Pittsfield Township, we made a change to highlight Sanford, this blue road here, which is a 2028 project. So we're certainly open to those changes. Obviously, the intent of these millage dollars is focused in on the primary network. That's where all of our traffic is. And this is a revenue source for the road commission to invest in those primary roadways. We don't have the ability to raise our own revenue. So this millage is it for us. We do have state and federal funds, but those are limited pots. They do not, even with these millage funds, they do not fulfill the needs that are out there. But they certainly are precious to us, and they help us manage our assets through our strategies and our asset management plan. The name of the game is extending the service life, and that's what these projects do. So what I wanted to convey to this board is we're working to finalize this plan. We also have it listed in a table format where if you're looking at, well, what roads are you actually working on? What are you doing? I just don't want to see pictures. I want to see a spreadsheet. That's where my passion lies, as with Dan. We want to, you can see that broken out by year. So this is 2025. This is broken out by county district and township, and then sorted alphabetically by road. You'll get the project limits. You'll get the type of work we're doing, the length of the project limits, and then the treatment cost, and then the total cost. These are planned dollars. Obviously, these are based upon costs in this year. Obviously, costs go up, and if we see a lot of inflationary costs, we typically would accomplish that project by adding a little more Michigan transportation funds to the project. Because one of the things that I think we have found great success in is we deliver on what we say we're going to do. If we say this is our project plan, we've got to deliver it. And sometimes projects may shift from one year to the other, but ultimately it gets done within that 4-year period. And that's an important thing. I think it's accountability, not only to the Board of Commissioners, which they have expressed positive remarks and compliments that this plan is well thought out. It is essentially transparent to the voters when they're going to the ballot box to say yes or no, and they know exactly what's going to happen with our dollars if they indeed is successful during that August ballot initiative. So next meeting, I will be under consent asking for adoption of this plan. This
board.
plan, yep. No, not this, I'm sorry, the first meeting in May.
May.
Yeah, it's not on the
But
agenda.
coming to us, not to the Board of Commissioners.
Right, coming to this board for adoption to the WCRC plan for millage dollars. So that we can then publish it on our website, is really what we're doing, as I spoke last time, we talked on this subject, education. Education is our primary initiative now. We want to make sure that we clearly have a plan that voters can look to our website and other means via social media and say, all right, we're aware of what will take place if we were to vote yes. We will also host a hybrid meeting here in this meeting room where we can invite the public. Previously, we educated our elected officials. Now we want to educate the public on this matter. So very similar format. We'll probably shorten it quite a bit because the public's attention span probably isn't a couple hours. We'll try to keep it under an hour. So.
Commissioner Green.
Madam Chair, if the millage does not pass, does that mean that these projects will not be done?
Correct. So,
Good answer.
yeah, and that is,
Next question.
it's a huge revenue source. So we're talking $18 million of primary road investment over the course of 4 years. And if that doesn't pass, you know, our goal as an agency is that our pavement rating is 80% good and fair condition on the primary system. I can guarantee you, if this doesn't pass, we're not going to meet that goal.
Thank you.
Commissioner McCollum.
Yes, Madam Chair. So Matt, I know this is to do with the primary roads, but I was just wondering about the residential roads too. Where does that fit in? Because there are a lot of residential roads that probably need some
Absolutely.
care.
So road funding in Michigan is especially challenged. We have a history of underfunding our investments. Local roads have suffered because of that. Really, we get enough money from the state to help maintain those roads via winter maintenance or addressing drainage or pothole patching. But we do not get enough funding for reinvestment, for resurfacing or reconstructing those local roads. That's why we have a local road matching program. We take some of the money aside and establish a matching program budget. A lot of local communities, the townships, will each take a different approach because some have a really great tax base. They can just take it out of the general fund and continue to invest in those local roads. Others have millages that they really, some will take that local millage and invest in subdivision streets. Some will take that local millage and invest in collector roadways, because no matter what, generally the case is that revenue that they're generating is never enough. So each township has to prioritize where they're going to make their investments. Is it the soft surface roads that are collectors? Is it those residential roadways? Some townships say, by policy, we're going to invest in those collectors because everybody travels on those. If we're talking about a subdivision, we're going to just do special assessment districts because the people that get those roads reconstructed are only benefiting that community. And there's just not enough money to go around fixing all the local roads. So each township does a little different. We allow that freedom, and as a road commission, we support them in those investments with the local road matching program. We've enhanced that over the years. We've enhanced the service level. We no longer ask for participation in dust control. We've changed our culvert sizing, meaning anything less than 5 feet, we're taking care of. We're not asking for contribution regardless if there's a permit required or not. And we'll continue to do what we can to support it with our balanced approach. As you can see, our primary roads need a lot of investments. And that's where the bulk of our travel is, and it's the backbone of our network. If you fix the local road, eventually all those local traffic needs to use the primary network.
Mhm.
And if that's not in good shape, it's all gonna fail. It's just. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where the local road problem is getting worse and worse. The condition is going down. And each community's gotta work with us, with how they're going to tackle that. And we're there to support them, but we only have, we're fiscally constrained. And each community's taking that and trying to solve it a little different. They may not, we've talked at great length, Linden Township has a lot of parkland. And so even if they were to pass a millage, there are fewer residents to carry that burden. So and the roads cost the same regardless of where you're at. So it's a tough subject to solve. But ultimately this millage, really focuses on our primary network, but that's a great question on the local side.
Thank you. That was a great answer.
Any other questions?
We put 2 million of our MTF.
That's
towards
correct.
This matching program.
Yep. And that was $500,000 more than last year.
Mm.
So and when you start dividing by,
But that's separate from the millage.
yes,
Let
or
me be clear.
that, your question was related to the local road program.
Yes.
And that went up $500,000. But then it sounds like a lot of money, but then you divide by 20 and then the cost of road construction, it ends up being not a whole lot. It may be a gravel road project. It may help move the needle a little bit over time. So we do what we can.
Commissioner Green.
So, the millage proposal is going to look exactly like it did before
So
on the ballot.
the ballot language, yes, it's a renew and restore. And really what we're fighting is every year into the millage, it goes down a little bit because of Headley.
Right.
So that restore gets it back up to $500,000, which is a really good thing for our agency and trying to fight the cost of inflation in construction costs.
Was there any discussion about increasing the amount or not really?
Of the millage?
Yes.
There was not a discussion at the Board of Commissioners. We did not ask for that because we feel like there's not an appetite for
I
an
understand that.
increase.
Right.
And there are so many other needs being expressed throughout the county relating to the BOC and asks for millages that we felt it a better strategy to continue our renew and restore. This will be the second time we've asked for a renew and restore. And it has been well received by the voters. The last time was 77% in favor of the ballot initiative last time. So we're hopeful that we'll see those same kind of results.
But I think the professional consensus is that even this is not enough money.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Other questions or comments?
All right, that's really all I had on that subject. With that, I think that exhausts our agenda.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners? If there is nothing else, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
Erin, if you would, please.
Commissioner Joanne McCollum.
Yes.
Commissioner Rock Green.
Yes.
Commissioner Gloria Yamas.
Yes.
And Commissioner Burkholder.
Yes, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. We will
Thank
see
you.
you back here at 1 o'clock.